All right. Understand that we are live. Let me go turn this off real quick. It's amazing what that little light can do to mess with things. I'm not really sure I'm not really sure why the quality of the particular camera is doing what it's doing, but hopefully you all can see me okay. In case you're joining us brand new, my name is Matthew Perry. I'm the lead pastor at Arapahoe Road Baptist Church in Centennial, Colorado. And what this is going to do, instead of us having our normal 3D Wednesday study, we're going to have our vision talk right now. And what I want to talk to you about is dealing with small groups. Small groups, big mission is the official title for this. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is this, is that outside of our worship gatherings, which right now we have two worship gatherings, 8:30 and 10:31, the next most important, I would believe, but just as significant, is our small groups. Now, the reason I say that the next most important is because that's one level down of when we begin to talk about the amount of people that are gathering. And so when we talk about small groups, I think it's good for us to recognize what exactly a small group is. And so basically, a small group, according to Lifeway, which I like this, not because it's Lifeway, but I like this. A small group is this, a microcosm of 3 to 12 Jesus followers doing Christian life deeply. 3 to 12. Now, some of you may say, well, I'm in a Sunday school class that may have about 12 to 20 to 25 to 30. Okay, I wouldn't consider that necessarily a small group, and we'll get into why, but let me just address this right now. It's not a small group because it's very difficult with that many people in a room to be able to dig in and to deal with life-on-life issues. When you get to a group that size and there's a leader, and sometimes it can come into a microcosm of what a big church, a venue would be, as we used to say in children's and youth ministry, big church. We want to make sure that we're doing what we can to provide environments for people, for every single person in the church, for everyone to be able to come together and to be able to say, look, I am going to be a part of something that will help me in my growth, that will help me to be able to connect with other people, that will help me learn the scriptures more, it will help me disciple other people well, and will help me to be on mission. It will help me to be on mission. So some of you, let's connect this with the overall mission. So if you have a worship guide, on the back of your worship guide, you see our mission to help all of Denver and the nations to believe that Jesus is enough. In what way? By being, making, multiplying, and sending hopeful, joyful disciples of Jesus. And we give you 5 core values that we have here. How will we produce hopeful, joyful disciples? And so this would be one where it's basically hanging around the B aspect of things. So what do we mean? Well, as part of being and producing hopeful, joyful disciples, number one, you attend our worship gathering and attend faithfully. It used to be that faithful church members were 2 to 3 times a week. Now it's 2 to 3 times a month. COVID season has exacerbated some of that. Connecting with community. That's where you're finding a small group, and that's what applies to what we're talking about now. Find a small group in which to develop Christian relationships. Well, then the other is join the mission, where each person finds somewhere either inside or outside the church to connect with a gospel-centered ministry. You give generously, and then you go as a missionary to reach your friends, relatives, associates, neighbors, and even strangers. So what we're talking about here is our small groups. Now, let's get some things out of the way when we talk about small groups. Are you saying, now, Pastor Matt, I've always thought about Sunday school being one thing, or our Sunday morning Bible studies, as some people call it, and I've thought of small groups being another thing. Our Sunday school classes, well, those are the ones that meet the hour or hour and a half before our worship services, at least pre-COVID. That's what we did. That's Sunday school. And then the small groups were groups that were outside of Sunday school, that were not a part of Sunday school, but they were small groups that would meet in homes, or sometimes they would meet here, or they would meet on Zoom, whatever the case may be. This is what began to happen, and this is why sometimes we look at small groups in a problematic way. We have such a line of demarcation between the small groups that take place on on a Sunday morning and small groups that don't take place on a Sunday morning. And because we have grown up with a particular form in mind about how church should be, that sometimes if it's not Sunday school as far as a small group, it doesn't count. Now you say, Pastor Matt, you're overstating it. I think if we're honest with ourselves, no, we're not overstating that at all. In our tradition, that has been how it's been, is that Sunday school is the small group. And in fact, Sunday school often is so treasured, that what happens is some people have a preference. Sometimes they come to Sunday school and may not come to church. Now, I think actually that last piece I just said speaks a great deal to what our small group ministries can be all about, whether they meet inside the church or out. What I'm saying to you then, before I really get into that, we cannot allow the form of something to disengage the function of something. Remember when the Spirit led Paul to write to Timothy that you have a form of godliness but deny its power? In other words, there's a form of something that looks really good, but it's denying its power. Now, what I'm saying is you can get so caught up with the form of something that if anything looks different than the form, even though it may be fulfilling that function, then then we end up discarding it. And I think that's what we've got to be really, really careful about. Listen, the win is to get everybody engaged in some sort of small group, and each of those small groups need to have really 3 particular aspects and attributes to it. So, and this can happen anywhere. This can happen inside the church or outside the church. Number 1, it has to be biblical. It has to be geared and centered and grounded around the scriptures, right? It has to be geared and centered around the scriptures. So take a look at Acts chapter 2. In Acts 2, verses 42 to 47, you'll see something that's going on here where the church at one point was a small group. I mean, eventually exploded. But the church was a small group that ended up meeting, and they had some attributes of their own about this. But let me read Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47. For some of you may be very familiar with this. Now listen to what's being said here. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. Now, what does that mean? Well, the apostles' teaching is basically the New Testament is being undergirded. The apostles' teaching, the foundation of the apostles' teaching is what was brought about in the New Testament. So, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship and the breaking of bread and to the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. All who believed were together. All who believed what? Well, what the scriptures were saying, right? All who believed were together and had all things in common, and they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds all day as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. Pardon me. So, what are we seeing here? Well, that they had devoted themselves, first of all, to the apostles' teaching. There's just no way around that. The apostles' teaching, what Jesus had taught the apostles in Acts 1:1-3, teaching them about the kingdom of God, the apostles now were passing that on to their generation. So everything was geared around the scriptures. And the idea was, it wasn't just the one person up front, the teacher, the leader, that was geared around the scriptures. You know what? Who else? It was the expectation that everyone there would be geared around the scriptures. Now let's back up here. Most of the interaction that we have with the scriptures deals with for our Sunday school classes, our quarterlies. And our quarterlies are absolutely wonderful in having someone to help you to explain what the scriptures are saying, ask really probing questions, and then at the end, it's wonderful. There's that engagement that's there. But one of the pieces that we want to make sure that we're doing and taking it a step further is, how can we help you to just open up a Bible and understand what's being read and said, and to be able to reproduce that to give to others? See, the problem that Daniel M. one time, when he worked at Lifeway, Daniel M. one time called it the sage on the stage, where everybody was geared around one leader. And sometimes that leader would basically give a lecture where there wasn't a lot of interaction, or that leader would be a facilitator, but it was always geared around that guy. And what we as leaders and teachers need to do is to be helping our people to understand how to study the Bible, not to show that we've studied the Bible and to give them information, but to help them to know how to study the Bible on their own for transformation, and to help them to study the Bible so that they can reproduce it to other people. That's what we've got to be after. And I'm going to tell you some steps we're going to take to try to implement that. But everything has to be geared around the Bible. That's where the discipleship, that's the foundation of the discipleship. The second part is relational. Relational, meaning that our mode is Sunday school. Love Sunday school. That's great. What are we doing to be relational outside of that teaching point? Are we getting together? Are we doing things together? Are we praying with each other? Are we getting together in groups of 2, 3, or 4 where we may go over what I may have preached, or what somebody may have preached, or what God's been doing in your life? There's a relational aspect to it. And if you go back to Acts 2, again, look at some of this. It was talking about that they had all things in common. In other words, they were making sure that everybody was being taken care of. They had all things in common. They were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. They were hospitable. They were bringing people into their homes and such. And when we get to the missional aspect of it, but that's still there, it's talking about they had favor with all the people. What's happening here? Well, what's happening here is there's a relational aspect that's going on. We have to be knowing what's going on with each other, not just physically. We're really good at sharing physical requests, but we have to also be making sure that we're talking about spiritual aspects, where we are keeping everyone accountable on how their walk with Christ is going. A word to us as leaders, that's why we as leaders need to be engaged in some sort of small group somewhere. For me, it could be with here at the church or with other pastors. If you're a deacon, get yourself connected with one of the small groups that's here at the church. I mean, we just can't get around that. We have to be sure that we're among our folks, and we are learning as well as teaching, helping us to be all in this together, where we as leaders are guides on the sides, but we have to be sure that we're being filled as well. The relational aspect, the communal aspect that happens when it comes to small groups is undeniable, and it is an integral part of who we are. So are you involved in some small group to where you have people that are able to keep you accountable in your walk with Christ? You learn how to love, you learn how to forgive, you learn how to encourage, you learn how to exhort, you learn how to be able to take constructive, biblical, and spirit-filled criticism. You're able to have so many things that are taking place that it's an offshoot. It's not more than the Bible. It's an offshoot of our interaction with the Bible. And that's where we get to this last part. Again, we'll try and keep this at 20 minutes, but I'm sure there'll be more to talk about. And there's a missional aspect of it. We are looking to the Bible, helping us to look up. We are relational, where we're taking care of each other, but now we've got to make sure we're looking outward. Well, is there something in our community? Is there something with that can be done with either here in our community or internationally that we as a small group can be a part of. There are so many groups that are around that could use the help from the churches. And wouldn't it be wonderful if our small groups began to move forward and begin to do this? That's how this all started, was they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching because there was a small group of people called the apostles that began to preach the gospel. More people began to come in because of the teaching, but they were being missional in their teaching. They were being relational to each other. They were being missional based upon the teaching that was given. And they began to move forward and to be able to make sure that they were connecting and taking the gospel on mission to those who needed it. And it says they had favor with all the people. That means they had favor with people that weren't a part of their group. There was a love and a winsomeness and a conviction and a commitment to truth that was actually very compelling, not repelling like we may think. We're not trying to beat people upside the head with the Bible. We are living and telling what the Bible has to say, what God is saying in his word on mission as we go forward. And so that makes our small groups have a lot more intentionality than they may have otherwise, than they may have before. You see? So our small groups, this is why. I want to take the last few minutes just to be very upfront and honest with you. This is why that when our personnel chair, Steve Lutz, asked me, Matt, what are some things that we could do to help you? And I said, well, I could use some help by having someone full-time to be on staff as a pastor, as not a lead pastor, obviously, but as an associate pastor, to be able to help with small groups. One of the things that we're looking at with our church council and such, and working with the stewardship team, is to be able to hopefully bring in someone that can serve as a discipleship and family life guide, which basically their main job would be to not only to be over the K through 12, but to also to be able to develop leaders for the small group ministry. What kind of small group ministry we have right now? We have Sunday school, Sunday morning Bible studies that meet at all sorts of different times of the week. But we also have what are called connect groups, or the small groups that Sam Huckabee is developing, and he's got two, and there hopefully will be a third one very, very soon. But Sam, man, we love you, and I don't know how you do it with seminary, 2 small children, full-time job. You know, you love Jesus and you love ARBC and you love us, and you're helping us to do that. Not only that, you're leading the youth as well. So there's just some help that's needed here, and we are hoping that the church will have read over this and pray about this and see it. We're in the midst of putting together a job description to bring before you very, very, very soon. And why? Again, bringing in an associate pastor isn't going to solve our small group problems. It's all of us finding the desire and this burden and this passion to get together in community to where we are biblical, relational, missional. We are biblical and understand what God's word says, relational, where we're understanding where each other's coming from and helping each other move forward to make much of Jesus. And we're missional because we want people that aren't a part of us to be able to come in. And the more we have engaged with that, the less of a burden it's going to be on any 1 or 2 or 3 people. We're all playing a part in the Great Commission moving forward. And our aim and hope is to have every single person that is a part of our church to be involved in some sort of small group, whether inside or the church with what we would call Sunday school, although that's kind of broken us out of that, or outside. I'll close with this. This COVID season has been, I believe, a blessing in disguise for us because it's made us rethink things and get out of our routine. It's made us really rethink how we're going to make sure we're going to keep the community up, keep the relationships going, even in the midst of us not being able to have these formalized times that we normally have at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning when we would have our Sunday school meet. It's still a priority, even though Even if we're not meeting at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, it still counts. If we're meeting at some point in some way, whether in person or over Zoom, whatever it would be, for us to make sure that we are connecting with each other. We have to be sure that we recognize this, where we're all playing a part in this community. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. Me to you, you to me, you to me to them to me, you to them to you. It's all over. So are you a part of a small group right now? And if you're not, let me know. And we will give you opportunities to be a part of what God is doing in our small group ministry right now. And pray for us, because this is going to be an act of faith as far as budget and resources. This is going to be an act of faith. If you decide that, yeah, we need an associate pastor, then that's going to be a step of faith as far as finances are concerned. But we've got to set ourselves up for the future, and we've got to set ourselves up to make sure that everybody is being taken care of, not only taken care of relationally, but that we're being built up biblically and missionally as we go out. Everything stems from our Bible ministry. And if we see that and we are connected with that, I believe only good things can happen, because I believe this is the way that Jesus set it up. All right. So let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for popping in. If you happen to be a part of our ARBC family, I'm going to be going over to the private Facebook page so we can be open and sharing prayer requests and such. And again, I apologize. That's what threw me off at the very beginning. If you started this off, I'm not sure what's wrong with the quality of the camera. It was doing fine before, but that's kind of how technology is. But hopefully the content won the day, even if the quality isn't up to par. Thanks, everybody. I'm looking forward to where we can have these vision talks more in person. But right now, we work with what we have. Thank you very much. And again, fill me in and let me know what you think so I can make sure that I was clear and that we can all be on the same page. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.